Today the world went broke. The true story of 1929. It was the era of jazz and champagne. The 1920s were called the Roaring Twenties for a reason. Americans were wealthier than ever before. Cars were rolling off assembly lines and skyscrapers were rising in New York. The stock market was a magic machine that only went up. Cooks and waitresses and taxi drivers were all buying stocks. They bought on margin, which means they borrowed money to gamble. For every dollar they had, they borrowed 10 more. Everyone believed that poverty had been defeated forever. But they were dancing on the edge of a volcano. In October 1929, that volcano erupted, and it buried the global economy under ash and ruin. This is the story of the Great Depression. It is the darkest chapter in financial history. To understand the crash, we have to look at the warning signs. There is a famous story about Joseph Kennedy. He was a wealthy investor and the father of the future President JFK. One day, in 1929, he stopped to get his shoes shine. The young boy polishing his shoes looked up and gave him a stock tip. Kennedy smiled, but inside he was terrified. He realized a simple truth. When the Shoeshine Boy is giving stock advice, the market is too hot. Everyone is already in and there is no one left to buy. Kennedy went to his office and sold everything he owned. He got out just in time. Most people were not so lucky. On October 24th, known as Black Thursday, the panic began. The market opened and suddenly, there were no buyers. Prices began to fall and margin calls went out. This meant the banks demanded their money back immediately, but nobody had the cash. Investors were forced to sell their stocks at any price just to pay their debts. This created a domino effect. More selling caused lower prices, which caused more selling. The ticker tape machines that printed stock prices could not keep up. They were hours behind the real trading. Nobody knew how much money they had lost. Rumors spread that top bankers were committing suicide by jumping out of windows. While many of those stories were exaggerated, the despair was real. By the following Tuesday, the stock market had collapsed completely. Billions of dollars of wealth simply vanished. But the worst was yet to come. The crash on Wall Street infected Main Street. People panicked and ran to the banks to withdraw their savings. But banks do not keep all the money in the vault, they lend it out. When everyone demanded their cash at once, the banks collapsed. 9,000 banks failed in the United States. Families who had never invested a penny in the stock market lost their life savings, businesses closed and factories shut down. Unemployment skyrocketed to 25%. 1 out of every 4 men was out of work. The Roaring Twenties were replaced by the breadlines of the 30s. Proud men stood in line for hours just for a bowl of soup. People lost their homes and lived in shanty towns made of cardboard. They called them Hoovervilles, named after the president they blamed. Farmers were hit by a double tragedy. While the economy collapsed, a massive drought turned the land into dust. This was the Dust Bowl. It forced thousands of families to pack their lives into old trucks and move west. The Great Depression was not just an American problem. It spread to Europe and destroyed the economy of Germany. The desperation in Germany helped a dictator rise to power. His name was Adolf Hitler. So you can argue that the stock market crash of 1929 eventually led to World War II. It shows us how fragile our civilization really is. We like to think we have fixed the system. We have central banks and regulations now. But the human greed that caused 1929 is still here. We still buy things with money we do not have. We still think the good times will last forever. We still ignore the Shoeshine Boy when he gives us stock tips. The Great Depression teaches us that the economy moves in cycles. Winter always follows summer. The question is not if it will happen again. The question is when. Are you prepared for the next winter? Subscribe to Hidden Logic as we explore the history of money and power. In the next video, we will fast forward to the digital age. We will look at the dot-com bubble where greed went online. See you in the next one.